Even though I've been based in Florida for most of the past quarter century, it's only been in the last year that I've had the opportunity to dive one of Florida's most widely known and best loved dive sites, Blue Heron Bridge. Spanning the intercoastal waterway between Riviera Beach and Singer Island, the bridge is unique in many ways. First, it's among Florida's few popular beach diving sites. Second, when diving Blue Heron Bridge, you are best off doing so within an hour of high tide. To do otherwise, risk strong currents and poor visibility. Third, because of the shallow depths and adjacent boat traffic, towing a dive flag is essential. When you first stick your head underwater at Blue Heron Bridge, you may wonder what all the fuss is about, as all you are likely to see is an abundance of sand and a few coral-encrusted artifacts. But as you get closer to the bottom, you'll discover that it's alive with marine life, including curious fish, tiny eels, and one of the most abundant collections of octopi anywhere. During my first dive at the bridge, I ended up spending nearly an hour barely moving from one spot because there was so much to see and film. Not surprisingly, Blue Heron Bridge is a popular training spot for beginning divers. It's shallow, protected, and relatively free from wave action. It also gives new divers the opportunity to experience the salt water and some of the aquatic life they will encounter offshore. I can't imagine a better spot for students' first one or two open water training dives. Unfortunately, some instructors don't limit it to just this. They conduct all of their open water training at this one location. Why is this a problem? Well, as I mentioned earlier, beach diving of any kind is fairly uncommon here in Florida. The vast majority of diving takes place from boats. This will inevitably be the next thing students will do following certification. Boat diving along Florida's Gold Coast isn't like boat diving in most other warm water locations. Nearly every dive is a drift dive, and depths generally exceed 60 feet. The ability to shoot an SMB and follow it to the surface is critical. Boat diving itself requires a very different set of skills than beach diving does. I've had several South Florida boat captains tell me horror stories of what can happen the first time these newly certified beach divers show up for their first boat dive, thinking that the experience will be largely the same as it was at the bridge. Okay, no one is saying that a beginning scuba course, no matter how long or how comprehensive, can adequately prepare students for every conceivable diving situation. Nevertheless, instructors have a responsibility to ensure students are prepared for the kind of diving they are most likely to encounter following certification. And if you teach in South Florida, that means boat diving. Most of the South Florida dive instructors I know who do their first training dives off the bridge follow them with 2 or more dives made from boats. That way, their students won't become some other dive boat captain's nightmare. Okay, what about those of you who teach in areas that are nowhere near the ocean? I've spent more than my share of time teaching in rock quarries in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, and I know from firsthand experience there is little you can do in those environments to totally prepare students for ocean diving. Well, the good news here is that none of the students or instructors I've come across in these places think that learning to dive in a freshwater quarry can adequately prepare you for places such as Cozumel or Grand Cayman. Inland dive instructors generally counsel students to make sure resort dive operators are fully aware of their lack of ocean diving experience. Dive operators in resort destinations also know to be on the lookout for such divers and to help them transition to this new and different type of diving. There is also the fact that diving in thicker suits, colder water, and limited visibility helps make the transition to warm tropical water somewhat easier. In contrast, dive operators in places such as South Florida and Southern California justifiably assume that if you learn to dive locally, you are prepared to do the kind of diving local divers do. And that's not unreasonable. So you got to ask yourself, what kind of job does your scuba course do in preparing students for the kind of diving they are most likely to do following certification? If you teach in a place like South Florida, your scuba course needs to include the opportunity to go out on a dive boat, period. If the reason you are not presently doing this is to save time or money, I can't help you. These are people's lives we're talking about here. Cutting corners to save a buck doesn't work in my world. Not when people's safety and enjoyment are at stake. If you are a student choosing between one dive center and another for your entry-level training, I'd remind you that saving money isn't always such a great value when your life is at stake. Or, as an Australian friend of mine once said, which half of a half-price scuba course do you think you can live without? Think about it.